Hey, I want to welcome our viewers to a special podcast. We have a real chiropractor on the line. So, and to tell you how it came about, and then I'm going to let him introduce himself. So, we had a person that lives here, gave me a couple sheets of paper and said, look at this. And it was educational based. I think it had nerves on it and it had a lot of good information on it. So I said, that's a person we want on our podcast. So I called his wife and she must have mentioned it to him. And so here we are. So Dr. Ryan, we want to welcome you to the podcast.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you guys reaching out anytime we can share information. It's one of the things we love to do. I think you were mentioned someone picked up paperwork. They met us out at one of the fairs. I think they were out at 4th of July. And so we love.
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly. I didn't know where it came from, but yeah, she was at the 4th of July. Yes.
Yeah, so we're always big into education, and so anytime we can set up and meet the community, we love to do those things. So it's kind of fun to know that when you hand out paperwork, it ended up somewhere with someone who was interested. You always kind of wonder, where does it go? Did it end up in a waste can? Or obviously not. So totally worth it that day to get a chance to meet you folks and share more info with your people.
Well, I will say this. It is in the waste can, but I scanned it first. I always scan my documents. So even though it made it in the waste pan, I still have a copy of it. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us who you serve so our viewers can get an idea who they're listening to.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Dr. Tim Ryan. I'm a chiropractor. At my office here locally is in the Butler Creek Shopping Center right next to Kroger on 41. I've been a chiropractor for 19 years. I worked up in Rome, Georgia for the first 16 of that. And then somewhere in the middle of that tenure, I opened this office here in Butler Creek. I worked both locations for a while. And then we graduated after COVID. Unfortunately, the office I was at was not able to maintain the scale. And so they scaled back a doctor. And so I became full-time here in only Ackworth, and it's been kind of the story from there. But my excitement realistically, where I got into chiropractic, I started a lot in sports med. So I find fun that your golfer, Pete, because that's where I thought I was really going. And then I got to chiropractic school and learned the scope of what chiropractic's really about and got super excited about family wellness, health overall, kind of in a big general sense. If you had to say, where's my niche? Anybody that knows me will tell you I'm just a big kid at heart. And so we do a lot with families, a lot with kids. But that ranges from pregnancy all the way to grandparents coming with kids. So we see the whole spectrum in a very family, wellness kind of perspective as we go through there. So yeah, pretty broad, but definitely with a focus of how do we get the most out of our lives? Day to day, something simple, not just, trying to chase, fixing symptoms, trying to feel good, missing kind of what's happening. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Now, I should ask the question. Usually I do. I should have asked if you're a golfer to your wife. I should have asked that. You would have been on the golf side of the podcast, but as we're here, so we might talk about cobblestone right around the corner from you. Do you ever play that course?
I'm not much of a golfer. I'm actually a very poor golfer. I grew up in a family that enjoyed golf. My dad was not a great golfer, but introduced both my brother and I. I'm a 100 plus kind of shooter for golf. My brother is a scratch golfer. Go to figure.
What a contrast. So we have to have your brother on the podcast.
If you want a golfer, he's definitely his own kind of guy. He's a lawyer down in Florida, so he has plenty of time to golf. So I keep my golf to disc golf, which I picked up during the pandemic, and so that's about as close as I get to golf. So
that's a pretty good one. I love disc golf. So let's get back to chiropractic because this is the Kennesaw happenings. So what would you say? What's your philosophy on chiropractic care?
Yeah, so that's kind of a nice big broad intro to what chiropractic is, but realistically, when I think chiropractic care, I'm thinking, how well is your body supporting itself? Chiropractic is directly tied to what your nervous system is doing. The nerves are running everything. It just so happens the main bundle of nerves runs through your spine. And so chiropractors are back doctors because that's where we have access to the spine and the protection of the spine. But realistically, back pain is such a very small portion. It's what most people think of because of where we work. But realistically, like I said, when you work with families and little kids, if you're only thinking back pain, there's not a lot of work to do. And so what I've learned and what I've experienced over the years of doing this is that it's really about how well your body works and what the nerves are up to. And so all of our focus is back to function. And so realistically, that's kind of the focus. What does your physical, ability, health level, how does that affect what you see as symptoms in day-to-day life activity? So whether that's energy levels, whether that's focus and attention, whether that's your body's ability to have good digestion and proper health in any of those sorts of ways. The nerve chart that you were mentioning is a great example of that, because it shows where everything's connected and how that all comes back to a different spot of the spine. And so, like I say, from a philosophical perspective, my big thing is education. The more I can help you to understand about how your body works and why you may or may not be having a problem, the more you're going to do with it. And honestly, if you're not in it, you're never going to get the benefits you want if you're just letting somebody else try to treat you, so to speak. And so our goal is to provide enough education that the patient is on board with trying to get their health squared away, ultimately trying to work me out of a job. Not too worried about in this day and age. We all live way too active lifestyles. We all like to do wild and crazy things. So there's plenty of stuff to be done. But my goal is really to get you stable so that you don't have to be there all the time and you can live a good, healthy life.
No, I love that. And my daughter is 30, my youngest daughter is 33. And when she was born, she was adjusted within a couple weeks of that. So I believe in chiropractic care. I don't know. Did you ever know Dr. Tim Ryan?
I know one at least, me personally, but you're talking about the pediatrician up in Cartersville?
No, he was a chiropractor in Marietta.
Oh, okay. No.
Oh, so no, there's excuse me. Hold it. Dr. Tim Langley. Excuse me.
Langley. There you go. There is a Dr. Tim Ryan up in Cartersville, but he's not a chiropractor. But Tim Langley, the name sounds familiar, but I don't think I ever met him. I didn't go to school in Marietta. I didn't go to Life University, which is thing for people to learn. I went to school out in Iowa at Palmer College of Chiropractic, which is where
Palmer. Well, yes, it's either Palmer or Life, it seems like.
They are the two largest chiropractic university systems in the world. They are really the driving force behind the wellness perspective of what chiropractic is doing. So yeah, when I moved here, I had no clue where Life was. So I ended up in their backyard completely accidentally.
Yeah, that's kind of really, then actually the gentleman that adjusted my daughter 35 years ago, he's since retired, but he went to Palmer too. So he was in Austell. I want to say Dr. Tom Morgan or Dr. Tom, something like that. But anyway.
Morgan is a chiropractor, yeah.
Pardon?
I'd say Tom Morgan is a chiropractor. I've met him. I wouldn't say I know him very well, but I have met him.
Yeah, I'm sure, there are a lot of them. And so when you say your practice, how do you distinguish yourself from the others that are out there today?
So I would say the things that define us is really, like I say, I'm the big kid in the office. So it is very much a family atmosphere. We run it, like a family, so when we meet new patients, we have very dedicated times. I dedicate my time to you. Everybody else can wait, and we need to get to know each other. Once we're established, we schedule appointments, but we're very open and very capable of managing walk-ins. And so when people go, the kids were running late, that's not a problem. Just show up when the kids are ready. We understand that, because then we have other folks who are on a schedule where, especially when we look at, some of our older folks or some of our more mature folks, they tend to be very punctual, even super early. And so life has a funny way of working out. And so we have this very kind of, laid back atmosphere, family, oriented, very kind of personal connection, perspective where, if you're here early, we're probably going to be able to get you in early. If you have to be late, that's probably not going to mess with our schedule. And so it's a very low stress scenario. The other thing that probably stands out for a lot of people when they first meet us or find out how we run things, we actually don't bill insurance companies directly. For folks that have Medicare is one of the few examples where that maybe doesn't work out the perfect cash basis best for the patient. But most standard health insurance policies, deductibles, copays are so high that the cost of chiropractic care goes up to manage all of that. So we've actually been able to keep our rates really, really low, probably one of the lowest in the area. But it also allows me to create care plans where I can discount things if I know you have a lot of care coming and those kinds of things. So it allows for budget planning and all those kinds of things. So it's very kind of user friendly in that way. Like I say, the goal is laid back and easy.
That's a good one. Laid back and easy. I like those two words. And I'll give some kudos to your wife, because she was so sweet on the phone that it just kind of, you could tell that her philosophy was make people feel comfortable. And so she did. And so we're here talking, which is a nice thing. So tell us, like, when it comes to like you're practicing in the Ackworth area. So are you treating people from a wider net, or not net, area in your practice today?
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority of our patients are going to be right in this, 41 and Ackworth due west, a ton of our intersection. That hub is obviously going to be the highest percentage of our patients. But we pull people from, mid Marietta all the way up to, I've got patients that drive in from Rome that still, we can't come see you all the time, but when we pass through, by golly, we're going to come see you because we've got that good kind of family relationship and they just know and trust. So if they're ever in this area. So yeah, I mean, we pull a pretty broad if you were to, pull all of our patients, but the vast majority are going to be Ackworth and Kennesaw. We actually, when we started the office, we weren't in this Butler Creek shopping center. We spent a couple months, building, but at other location, and we were actually in downtown Kennesaw for a while. And so we're very connected with like Kennesaw Parks and Rec and a lot of their downtown activities. So like I said, the 4th of July event in Kennesaw, that's where the paperwork got to you. That's where we were in downtown Kennesaw. Because of our connections there, we haven't been as connected with like, Ackworth Parks and Rec or those kinds of things. But obviously we're in Ackworth, so we get a big draw from there. So Kennesaw and Ackworth are definitely our major locations. But like I say, we have people who work in the area that don't live in the area. So this is close to work, so that's convenient. We have people who live in the area but don't work in the area, so it's convenient because it's near home. And we always encourage people, if it's not easy to get there, you're not going to go. And it doesn't matter how good your chiropractor is, you're not going to get benefit if you don't go. So, yeah.
What do you see I'm in a senior overture, which is an active community. What do you see when it comes to treating and adjusting seniors versus maybe somebody in their 20s and 30s? What's the difference in maybe their body structure, and what issues you see as they become a senior?
Yeah, I would say the biggest issue I see, especially in active, seniors, is going to be the realization that your body doesn't heal as quickly as it used to. You can't do all the same things and think that you can be able to keep up the level or the frequency. So that's the biggest thing I encourage people. You're going to have to give it a little bit more time. You're going to have to kind of understand there's some limitations. Not that you shouldn't do things, but realize that if you play a really rigorous, round of golf and you struggle, you might need to give yourself that extra day of recovery before you go out again to avoid a repetitive, issue, or trauma, those kinds of things. As far as a chiropractor treating patients, the bigger things I have to contend with is obviously a loss in muscle mass for most older folks. That's just kind of a natural process. So, I can't push as hard. I can't work as hard. There's not as much muscle to have to overcome, which usually means adjustments are easier. I can use less force. They're more comfortable in that regard. But to the same extent, without lots of muscle mass means, we're right there on the bone. So things can be a little bit more tender. You feel like you're poking right on joints or right on like the corners of bones, like an elbow or a hip joint, those kinds of things. So those are certainly, and then as we see, age progress, eventually we start to talk about bone density and those sorts of things. And those all become considerations for, how do we adjust, use a lot of different techniques depending on what's relevant to the patient. And so that plays into a big role of what keeps it comfortable, what makes your adjustments not a deterrent, so to speak, because
Mhm.
if you're really sensitive, that's just not fun. Nobody wants to be in pain to try to get out of pain. It doesn't connect for people. And so we're always trying to work with what's the most effective for the body, but also what works best for your particular body. And that might mean different styles, different pressure levels, different, ways of approaching a problem.
Awesome. What do you think when it comes? I don't know if it's more techniques, but I know the activator and versus the regular hand. What camp are you kind of in? Do you have both? Are you in one
Yeah.
particular more than
So I
others?
use all of the above. If I were to say where's my preference is going to be in hands-on chiropractic, a very physical kind of manipulative type of approach to what chiropractic is. So most of my adjusting styles start with the hands-on. I do have an activator. We also use the drop table. It goes up and down just that little bit. It uses the wonders of physics and momentum to get things to move without having to use a lot of big pressure forces. So like I said, I use all of those, and it's really, I'm a bigger fan of the technique needs to fit the patient, because everybody's a little bit different. So even though I know what I like, how I like to be adjusted, the way I think I adjust the best, it doesn't matter if that's my best, if it's not your best. So we got to find that combination.
Gotcha. I know in the name Ryan Family Wellness Chiropractic Center, when it comes under the wellness umbrella, do you have others in your office that practice wellness too? Or do you refer, like if I had a nutrition question, would you refer me out, or will you taking care of their needs inside of your?
Yeah, no, in the office, it's just me. Over the years, we've tried to find massage therapists and nutritionists and things that we could partner with, and have all together as a kind of a one-stop place. Because I'm a real big fan of, you should talk to somebody who's an expert in that area. My expertise is chiropractic and the spine. I can tell you all about that. But I'm not going to be the expert in massage. That's just not, where I'm excited. I'm not going to be the expert in, nutrition. That's just not where I'm excited. And so I always encourage people, if you need more than a very kind of base, here's the general introduction. When we decide, what, you need some more than that, let's find you somebody. If you've got somebody that you trust, great. If not, here's some people that we know. We always try to keep a list of people that we've directly worked with. If I haven't spoken with them and worked with them, then I try not to necessarily give out names, because the last thing I want is for you to end up somewhere you don't like. So people we've specifically had personal interactions with, we try to keep those names around so we know where we can send you. And so we do have people that are good at nutrition, good at natural supplements. I don't necessarily have a personal trainer right now that I've been working with. We know a couple of good PTs in the area. So, it just kind of depends on what we're looking for and helping figure things out.
That's awesome. What do I'm a big reader. What do you have any books that you enjoy that you could recommend to our viewers that have helped you personally?
I'm trying to think in terms of, I'm not a huge reader. My learning style is very auditory. And so, most of what I get is kind of a very hands-on. So books are always a hard, tangible recommendation for me. I'm also a big fan of, I read a lot of stuff on both sides of any point that I have an agreement on. And I've learned to suck up the things I disagree with so I can see what the other side is thinking and where they're coming from. And if there's something to be learned there, I think that's of value. So I'm not a big fan of shunning away from anything. Generally, I think most people have a lot of access to what would be considered mainstream medicine or kind of a medical perspective on health and wellness. So usually when I recommend things, or if people are asking what they should look into, I encourage them to look into very holistic, kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, treating the body, kind of those kinds of things, even if it feels out there for them, that they should just look for the things they can take out of it. They don't have to buy into everything. They don't have to agree with everything, but both sides of any issue are going to have valid points. And if you can learn to pull those, you're going to do a lot better. So like I said, most people have access to plenty of medical information. So getting a holistic, natural, viewpoint to balance any choice they make is, I think, their best option.
No, I agree with you. Recently, maybe the last, I think, 4 months, I've switched over to a concierge medicine, which is Partner MD. And there's a medical doctor who has a integrated, as they call it, or holistic. training. So he handles that. Then a nutritionist, exercise PhD handles the other side. So like this week, I'll do a Zoom call with him, and I've been tracking all my nutrition, and so he actually calls me and goes over my markers and all that. So I was wanting over the years a balance of holistic and medical, because there's certainly need for certain medication.
That's my biggest amusement in practice, and I probably hear it more from my older folks just because of necessity, is when I get to the point where I'm looking at someone's case and I think they need a surgical intervention or a more mainstream, maybe more invasive type of procedure.
Mhm.
The shock people look at me when they go, "So you're suggesting I have surgery, or you're suggesting I need to go talk to somebody about medication?" And yes, I mean, there's a time and a place for those things. Do I think they're overused in the general health arena for the general public? Yes, but that doesn't make them invalid. They have a great use. And so it is that balance of use them when they're necessary, be as least invasive as you can until you have to. And so, yeah.
No, I totally agree. You couldn't have picked better words to say than what you said. And I just like that education to cover both camps, and that quarterback, as kind of I call them, make those determinations. And we basically scaled down some medications to lower levels and kind of adapted some things based on his understanding of the holistic or integrated, as they call it. And so, and I'll tell you, this one really shocked me. So our viewers are out there. There's a book called Glucose Revolution. And I've never heard this before, but this person said, eat vegetables first, then your protein, then your carbs, then a sugar. And so I started doing that. I mean, the weight just melted off. My energy level is off the chain. Never had heard that before. So I mentioned it to him. He goes, "Oh, yeah, let me show you the book." He pulls it off the shelf. And so it's like, wow, it's somebody that validated something. I just heard a podcast and I thought it was interesting to hear it. And this is what this person had done. She was a scientist. So she wasn't a doctor, but because of her injury, it led her on a journey, and that journey basically had her writing this book, and it's an excellent one.
Yeah, the information about how your body digests and how you can, use, those triggers to sort, in that case, like say order of food, by getting your body to be thinking about working on one thing rather than just look at all the sugar, I have to store it, and then it ignores everything else. It is pretty wild.
That's wild. Well, Dr. Ryan, I know you got patients to see, and your wife's probably saying, "Okay, we got another set of patients, so you got to get off that podcast and talk to these people in here." So one question before we leave, we always ask our guests, is there one person that thinks like you that you think would be a good guest on our wellness or Kennesaw happenings? And it's really Kennesaw and Ackworth. They're so close that you might as well think of them as twin cities. Is there anybody you can think of off the top of your head?
Comes to mind. I know a couple people in the general, kind of health world. I know I've got our naturopath that we use. She's actually not local. She used to live in this area, then moved, but most of her business was virtual. So she still, entertains clients virtually in this area. She might be an interesting one. And then the folks that we refer to for supplements and natural health, I know they're always looking for education and sharing information they've got. And I'm sure they would be more than happy, to help out as well.
Awesome.
So,
and keep an eye out. I'm fascinated with essential oils. I have 2 machines in and I used to get them years ago from some other company, and I've ordered a couple from Amazon, and they're just not strong enough. I don't know, they're watered down or something. But if you know of anybody in essential oils that you could refer to us, we'd love to have them on the show, because there's always some cool things that happen in that arena too. So I know Sarah will reach back out to you and just give her a name or two of somebody you think would be a good guest, and we would appreciate that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
awesome. Dr. Ryan, I want to thank you. And you owe your wife a dinner because she was as sweet as I've seen anybody. Usually when I'm called, people think there's a hidden agenda or something, but the paperwork that was passed on to me was excellent, very educational based. And if you're up for it down in the near future, maybe coming in here and educating our seniors just on cool things that they can be aware of that would come from your educational background and just helping them make better informed decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I love any opportunity to share what I know and anything that'll help folks. So yeah, if there's an opportunity or a want, I would be more than happy to chat with you guys or come down and spend some time.
Okay.
You guys are right there on Barrett Parkway, right?
Yeah, right by like Academy
Academy?
Sports, Hobby
Yeah, my son lives
Lobby,
right across the
behind the
street in Walden
QT.
Ridge.
Say
Yeah,
that
that's
again.
my son lives right across the street in Walden Ridge. So
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. I know it well. Yeah. People walk across there all the time from here. Okay, well, Dr. Ryan, we appreciate you being on Kennesaw Happenings. I'm going to give you the last word. Any words of wisdom that you can pass on to our viewers before we go?
I mean, my biggest thing for people is don't let things get you down. There's always a way to move forward. There's always an option that you can look at. If you haven't tried everything, then look for the next option. Whether that be something that seems out in left field, or whether that seems like it was too easy, so we didn't try it. Sometimes little things have the biggest effects, and the biggest things have the littlest effects, and it's a little backwards. So you do really want to try everything to get yourself out of those holes to live the best life you can.
I love it. I love it. That is awesome. All right. We want to thank our viewers for tuning in to Kennesaw Happenings. Thank you.